Okay, so I'm going to talk about in this video why I think scientific reasoning is exactly why we have a crisis of meaning, right? So, how the idea of looking at the world through the scientific method has been blinding us to the real view of reality, right? Because don't get me wrong, I think the scientific method is an incredibly powerful tool, if not the most powerful tool humanity has ever invented, the best social technology. That is one of the craziest ones. I'm sorry if the mic just went crazy, but I believe that when it becomes a worldview, it compresses reality, flattens reality, removing so much depth from it that we forget what the point of everything is, right? And it leads to a crisis of meaning, right? So, scientific logic is a method, not a complete map of reality, right? So, science is really good at explaining mechanisms, collecting data and such, but weak at explaining meaning, purpose, and value, right? It's great at getting all of these data points, but doesn't tell you what to do with that data unless you know and you have an agency to what to do with that data, right? So scientific logic is going to ask you what can be measured, tested, repeated, and predicted, right? And that makes it really powerful for like engineering, medicine, physics, and like causal explanation, like figuring out like why things happen and why things happen. Yeah, exactly. Just figure out why things happen, right? But people make this hidden jump where they turn that method into their entire worldview. If I can't explain it, then it doesn't exist. A lot of people do that, where if I can't measure it, then it doesn't exist. Why would I ever think about it? And it's like, that's not the purpose of it, right? And it's supposed to be used in this very compressed reason, not compressed, let me not say that. You're supposed to use it in a very siloed way, right? Where you use it for this purpose and this purpose only, not in everything. It's a tool, right? Like a hammer or a drill, right? You use it when it needs to be used, not for everything, right? It's like the saying where when you become a hammer, everything becomes a nail, right? And I think this just leads to them assuming that only the measurable is real, right? If I can't measure, if I see the world through a scientific lens, the only things that matter are the things I can measure, right? Like money, power, right? And these things become just a focus, right? Focus on, like you can see in economics, focus on GDP. GDP go up, everyone's happy. Is that really the truth, right? And it just shrinks reality into like mechanisms, matter, and efficient causes, which makes sense because we are very efficient life forms. So we always want to shrink reality to the most efficient use case, right? So we end up just being lazy and being like, all right, yeah, the only things that matter are these things. And it's just like, well, that's because our brains want to do that, right? And it's just like, the core thesis of this is science for an explanation or like an example is science can tell you what happens in the brain when a mother sees her child. She experiences love, right? But it cannot fully explain what it means for a mother to love her child, right? And I just want to outline here. The mistake here is not using science, it's letting science become your king, right? And this ties into the next note about Greek and classical thought and how they saw the world, right? And I think this is just another polar like end of it. So like they're on different polar opposites, right? And the Greek and classical thought of reality was vertical, not mechanical. And I would just, instead of saying mechanical, I'm gonna say horizontal, flat versus 3D, right? The Greeks didn't think about how things work. They asked, what are these things? What are they for? And whether they're moving us towards fulfillment or corruption, right? What direction is this thing moving me in, right? And then you can almost see how science stood on top of this, right? Where for you to understand how things work, you need to understand what things are and what they're for, right? And so it's kind of stood on top of this and then kicked it out from under it, and now it's in free fall, right? So, classical thought was kind of anchored on the idea of telos, and telos is just the proper ends of a thing, or you can say that means to the end, right? What is it for? And like you can say like a good knife, an example of this is like a good knife cuts well because it fulfills its nature. Its nature is to cut bread, right? And a good human life is judged whether it fulfills humans' excellence, right? Excellency in whatever way you categorize that, right? So this creates a frame of higher and lower, right? Nobility and base, right? Ordered and disorder, and ascent and degradation, right? So it creates these two things where things are always on that gradient, right? Where you're either getting better or you're getting worse, right? And the soul is not supposed to be ruled by what I want to do alone, right? The only thing that if your main guiding thought is what makes me feel good in this moment, the soul is not going in a proper direction from their point of view. I also agree with that, but from their point of view, right? I am biased. I have my biases, right? And to them, things like reason, virtue, discipline, truthfulness, they were seen as higher order in reality, right? Like that's what they saw as better. And things like deceit, betrayal, lying, those were lower, right? You were leading us towards chaos if you embodied those things. And you're leading us towards greatness if you embody virtue and discipline and such, right? And the way this is different from the way we view the world is we just view them as different. We don't add a score to them, right? They're just different, right? Like if you want to do this, if you just want to do what makes you happy versus doing what's better for your family, those are just different things. Whatever makes you happy, just do it, right? Even though one might not even make you happy, but you're doing it because it leads to further fulfillment for your descendants, right? And, it was just the idea of some things are just better, right? And that was the way they viewed things. And it was like the ancient world didn't just see behavior, it saw altitude, right? Which way are we heading, right? So we track behavior now, but what makes us choose one behavior over another? That's what fascinates me, is what makes us choose things, and why did we choose these things, and why? Is it better to do these behaviors than do this behavior? And to what means, right? So that's something that I want to go deeper into. And the next thing was, what happens when you remove this? You get the world that we're living in now, where everything collapses into preference. What do you want, right? And it's like vertical depth, this idea of integrating back this classical logic, it needs to be anchored to something above what's in fashion right now, what's popular right now, what's trendy, and what's useful, right? Even what's useful, right? Because sometimes it doesn't make sense to be a good person. That sounds crazy, but like in a lot of settings, it does not make sense to tell the truth, right? And when your vertical depth and your idea of the world is anchored to something above that, you'll tell the truth no matter what. And that's what really matters, right? So like, if higher and lower are only based on your personal preference, then they aren't really higher or lower. One isn't better or worse. They're just decorated cravings, right? So let's just say I want to be a just person and you want to be a just person, but a just person to you is, taking care of your family, taking your money and providing for others, providing for your community. And a just person for me is enriching myself, right? Enriching myself and only my family, only looking out for my family and not looking out for my community, right? To both of us, we're doing stuff that fulfills our preference, but it's not higher or lower. It's just itself. I would agree that you're higher than me because that's the way I view the world and the way I see things. But it's just we don't even measure for meaning anymore, right? And we have the information. We have more information than ever, but we have no idea what it means, right? And we became better at measuring the world while becoming less certain how to rank the things in it, right? We stopped categorizing things because it might hurt other things' feelings. And this is kind of like the big thesis of it, right? So science gave us this power, this immense power to measure things and to see how things work. But vertical depth in the past way of thinking tells us what the power is for, right? What can we use this stuff for? And that's all ties into agency, right? Doing the things, right? So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, comment down below. I know I stutter, talk, trip over my words. This is kind of a stream of consciousness. Some notes are in front of me as well, so I'm reading my notes. And I like to record these videos. And yeah, so the comment section, cruel, demanding God, and it demands sacrifice, knowledge, letters, words. Say what's on your mind. I'm going to talk to you. I'll respond to you. I love talking about this type of stuff. And yeah, comment down below. You'll see my buddy Experience Yourself in the comments. He comments on everything. He'll be down there commenting too. Let's keep it going, guys. See you guys in the next video. Peace.